twice this year, just a few months apart, a lot of gaming journalists and a lot of Xbox quote-unquote influencers or opinion leaders freaked out. Some of them broke their Xboxes. Some of them have moved on and said, I'm never doing Xbox again. And the entire time, both times, I said, wait a minute, guys. Let's look at this in larger context of the gaming industry. And lo and behold, both times now I've been proven right. We are seeing a shift in the gaming industry. I've said this all along. The next 5 years are going to look completely different than the past 5 years. That's what this looks like. We're seeing corrections. We're seeing shifts. And it's not unique to Xbox. What everybody has done, especially the last two times that they've freaked out. So the first time was when Xbox announced that, hey, we're going to bring some of our games over to multi-platform, like Sea of Thieves, for instance. Oh, by the way, Sea of Thieves looks like it's one of the top selling games over on PlayStation 5. So I think that proves at least that proves in theory that has worked for them. And then the second time was the Xbox layoffs that happened last week, the consolidations and realignment of studios. And what happens, I think, is if you look at those two instances and you look at them right here, and here's the Xbox layoffs and here's the moves here. Oh my goodness. This is what a lot of traditional gaming journalists who have inserted their own assumptions, for instance. And I have another video. My last video went over that. But they're looking at it in this narrow scope right here. And if you widen that scope, what you see is, wait a minute, it's not an Xbox problem. It's not an Xbox management problem. It may be an Xbox messaging problem. Maybe they can message it different. I will grant you that. I have been very critical of Xbox messaging in the past. But rather, it's a gaming industry problem. Also, it's a console problem. PlayStation has admitted it's the same. Let's go through the receipts because it's been a few days. And once again, for those of us who remained calm, for those of us who looked at these things happening in context of the greater gaming industry, we see that it's not an Xbox problem and everybody else has egg on their face. I tweeted out this morning that I think I shared the video from last week or late last night I tweeted it out. And I said, I think there's a shift in gaming, and with that, people are going to be changing where they get their information from. I think gaming journalists have let us down. I think traditional key opinion leaders have let us down. You cannot continually have emotional, reactionary, bad takes without taking into context everything else that's happening in the wider gaming community and expect people to continue to come to you for information, to come to you for opinions. And that's what keeps on happening. And if you continue to do that, people are going to move on. I think at this point, honestly, it's inevitable that people move on. Now, I think they move on to someone like me. I think they move on to individuals on YouTube who can take a breath, can take a step back, and can say, wait a minute, what's happening here? We'll see, though. Maybe an adjustment happens. But let's go over these news stories. Let's go over these receipts. This first one is from gamesindustry.biz, which is ironic because if you go over to gamesindustry.biz, they have 3 or 4 articles crapping on Xbox, and then they come out with this article. So this gamesindustry.biz, Fallout 4 rules the roost in April in the UK monthly charts, and then in small headlines, but console market declines in 2024. Now, this is not Xbox market declines. This is the console market as a whole. Oh my goodness, the console market is declining. I blame Game Pass, everyone. I blame Game Pass. This is a meme going around on Twitter right now because it seems like everybody's wanting to blame Game Pass when it happens to Xbox, but now it's a wider issue, so let's discuss it. Fallout 4 was comfortably the best-selling game of April in the UK, according to latest GSD data. It shows how important cultural moments like the Fallout TV show having success is. The fact that Fallout 4, a last-generation game, is the number one selling game is absolutely huge. It was a quiet month for game releases last month in the UK. 2.23 million games were sold, which is a drop over 7% over the year before. However, it's worth noting that April 2023 featured the launches of Star Wars Jedi Survivor and Dead Island 2, which boosted the market last year. There was no comparable title this year. Fallout 4's surprise rise to the top comes after some steep discounts on the game that coincided with the smash hit Fallout TV show, which was released on Amazon last month. Outside of Fallout 4, Fallout New Vegas is up to number 8. 76 is number 9, and Fallout 3 just misses out on the top 10. Fallout 3 is in the top 10 games sold in the UK. That's huge. There were no new games in the top 10 for April, with PlayStation Stellar Blade coming in at number 12. Oh my goodness. I blame Game Pass. PlayStation's in trouble, everyone. Let's go. Let's skip down here. Game consoles continue to struggle in 2024. Sales of video game consoles continue to struggle in the UK, with hardware sales down 39% over April, 71,000 units. All three major platforms continue to post declines. All three major platforms continue to post declines. Again, if you take a step back, just a few days later, we get this. If you take a step back, not this narrow scope, it's not an Xbox problem. It's an industry problem. Indeed, if you take a further step back, it's not just an industry problem. Multiple industries are having this problem. The macroeconomic worldwide events happening affect everything. We're in tough economic times. We're correcting for all of that loose money that was out there. Loose money that was out there during COVID. That's what's happening here. Let's go on to Nintendo. Let's see what Nintendo has to say. Nintendo is delaying games releasing because they're delaying their new Nintendo Switch. And the Nintendo president said, quote, game development will become even longer, more complex, and more sophisticated. Shuntaro Furukawa has explained to Japanese magazine Famitsu that video game development will become even longer, more complex, and more sophisticated in the future, and that mergers and acquisitions could be one way to address that. What did he say? I thought Xbox was just acquiring studios because they were in trouble. That without that acquisition, Xbox would be dead. That it was a desperate attempt to survive. Meanwhile, Nintendo, who's absolutely been crushing it, says no, there are more issues here. Game development is becoming longer, more complex, more sophisticated, and one way to counter that is through mergers and acquisitions. Mergers and acquisitions could be one way to address this. Nintendo isn't the only company to say the video game development is becoming longer, more costly, and more complex, with both Sony and Xbox echoing this statement in the past. Both Sony and Xbox have echoed this statement in the past. Again, you take this limited view that a lot of our gaming journalists had last week, that a lot of the key opinion leaders, and you widen out your context just a little bit. You widen out the scope. You provide context here, and you can see it's an industry issue. We're living through this shift. There's an industry shift happening in gaming right now. Xbox is not immune to it. In fact, I would say that Xbox is at the forefront of making this shift. They've been the quickest to make this shift. And I think their position that at not the top spot in consoles has forced them to do so. But it's not all doom and gloom as some of the influencers, as some of the gaming journalists would have you believe. He also stated, this is the president of Nintendo, that further lengthening complexity and sophistication of game development is inevitable in the future, and that mergers and acquisitions is one possible means to address this, but added, first of all, we would like to develop human resources who understand Nintendo's brand well within the company and who will be responsible for Nintendo's future development, along with developers who have built the brand over the years. However, the company's base policy is to, quote, first of all, understand the Nintendo brand well within the company and develop human resources who will be responsible for the future development of Nintendo together with brand over the years. They just repeated themselves. I think that was a mistake. I think that was a mistake. And who is this? My Nintendo News. I think you repeated yourself there, guys. But not unique to Xbox. So let's go over, as if that's not enough, let's go to PC Gamer, who was absolutely crushing Xbox last week, crushing them. PC Gamer, sometimes they have good articles, but a lot lately, their takes are just engagement clickbait, I think. Large-scale game development is crushing under its own weight, according to Devolver co-founder. Wait a minute. I thought this was just an Xbox problem. Lo and behold, no, it's not. During the last Game Developers Conference, GDC in March, Lori, who is this? The head co-founder, Devolver Digital's co-founder. Devolver Digital is amazing, by the way. Lori discussed these issues in an interview with GamesIndustry.biz and what it means for the publisher. There's us on maybe the smaller to medium-sized end, but on the larger end, it feels like game development is crushing under its own weight a little bit. The consumers are so tied up in some of these really fantastic live service games, but there's only so much time they can spend. So there are more and more huge games being launched, asking for an enormous amount of time, but there's just not that much time available for people to play. Helldivers, he says, is an excellent example. I play a lot of Helldivers with coworkers and friends. It's hard to pull people away from such a fantastic experience. You're really fighting for time. I don't care if you're a one-person self-published studio or someone that has 1,000 people making a live service multi-generational game. You're still competing for that player's time. We avoid big games, obviously, because of the momentum they'll have in the press and with influencers, but then you also have to think of the consumers. And think about this is correct. He's saying big games, they cost so much, and you're competing against more games, small games, medium games, big games, live service games than ever before, that it's becoming impossible. That is becoming impossible or harder to make these big budget games make sense. This is something that Xbox has said. This is something that PlayStation has said. And think about it. In your own life, what does your backlog look like? It's probably larger than it's ever been before. I know mine is. And it's because we have more options. And Sarah Bond has stated this. There's a black hole in gaming. An increasingly amount of gamers are playing the same 4, 5, or 6 games. How do you compete? How do you grow the market with that? How do you tear them away from that? It's why PlayStation wants to jump into the live service game. And indeed they have with Helldivers. It's why they went after Destiny. And if that's not enough, everybody, that's not enough. This morning, we learned that Tom Warren tweeted this out, but more people have tweeted this out. Sony's PS5 sales are down 29% year over year in the recent quarter. Sony also says it sold 20.8 million PS5 consoles for its full 2023 fiscal year, a slight miss on its revised target of 21 million units. Sony now expects PS5 sales to decline to 18 million over the fiscal year 24. Now, why does this matter? They're still selling a ton of hardware consoles. They missed on their projections, but they've declined. This lines up with what Xbox has said, the decisions that Xbox is making. We have not seen the last of consolidation across the gaming industry. Not at all. We are going to see more. And if you were just focused on Xbox alone, you would think, oh my goodness, Xbox is down, Xbox is dead, Game Pass is dead. No, it's not. It's an industry-wide problem. Again, it's a macroeconomic problem that we're dealing with. There's a real industry shift happening. I've said it all along. The next 5 years is going to look completely different than the past 5 years. As if that's not enough, Square Enix announces that it's set to make layoffs as part of its ongoing company restructure. But wait a minute. I thought Xbox was getting destroyed. I thought Xbox was dead. How can we trust Xbox anymore? If you say that to my video last week, if you say that about Xbox, you've got to say that about Square Enix. You got to say that about PlayStation. You got to say that about Take-Two. You've got to say that about almost literally every major game publisher in the industry at the moment. Square Enix doing this as well. It told US and Europe-based staff in an internal meeting today that there's going to be more layoffs. Now, what else did they say? Square Enix is now aggressively pursuing multi-platform strategy that includes Nintendo platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PCs. They're moving away. They're going multi-platform. They're moving away from only being a part of PlayStation, from those PlayStation exclusives. Now, I think someone broke down the numbers, and I think there were 6 exclusive games last year, but they're going multi-platform. Oh my goodness, that's a terrible decision. Xbox did the same thing. They're terrible. Now, if you were to look at these decisions by Xbox to take Sea of Thieves over to PlayStation, to take Sea of Thieves to PC, the question would be, why own an Xbox? That's what's been asked. Like, why are they doing this? They're crushing it. Same with PlayStation 5. PlayStation 5 is now going day one on PC. I actually blame their decline in sales on going to PC. Why own a PlayStation at this point? You see how when you apply that logic, you can't look at things just in this narrow scope. You gotta broaden what you're looking at, and you can see this is happening everywhere. Again, just like I said last week, for everybody that was freaking out and yelling and talking about trust with Xbox, which, by the way, was a projection. It was just a projection for many people of their own. They were making assumptions, so it wasn't correct. But we see Square Enix now making layoffs. Square Enix now deciding, hey, we're going to go multi-platform with everything in the future. We just have to. Like, that's it. We are living through a giant shift in the gaming industry. And I mean, these stories just dropped over the last couple days here. And we're just, when you look at them in this broad scope, when you provide greater context, you can see it's not an Xbox issue, it's an industry-wide issue. And actually, when you look out and you see everything that's happening in the industry, the argument can be made, and I'm making this argument, that Xbox is actually leading this in the respect that I think they've adjusted quicker, faster. I think they've made the necessary moves. I think Game Pass is a solution to many of these issues. And I think they're ahead of the game. I think they're ahead of the curve here. I would say, and I would argue, that PlayStation 5, for instance, is a little bit behind. They've been slower to adjust. And we're going to see, does that affect them long term? I don't know. It's going to be interesting. Once again, this is the time that we're living in. The past 5 years or the next 5 years will look completely different in gaming than the past 5 years. How do you adjust? Do you adjust? Is consoles dead? I don't believe that consoles are dead. I think there's a place for consoles still. And I think Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, they've all stated that that's coming. I do think portable gaming is definitely in the future and in the cards there. And I think subscription-based gaming is there as well. I think that that's a solution to where we're headed in this shift. And once again, I think Xbox is at the forefront of it. You just saw Nintendo talk about mergers and acquisitions. Let me go back to that article here real quick. That's a solution to the increased complexity of game development, the length of game development. Indeed, you can see, because of mergers and acquisitions, look at the latter half of this year for Xbox, the releases that we're getting. That would prove correct. They would have proved that theory correct, that statement by Nintendo correct. Let's wrap this up today. I wanted to point this out. We've had twice now where gaming journalists that cover Xbox, where Xbox opinion leaders have let us down. And you just wait a few days and you can see, oh my goodness, egg on your face. It's not just an Xbox issue. Xbox isn't making these decisions in a vacuum. There's wider context. There's industry-wide context to provide. And then there's macroeconomic, worldwide context to provide. And you can see that it's a shift. It's a shift in gaming. I would love to know what you guys think, though. Am I overstating the case here? Has Xbox lost your trust? Maybe it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. I only care about what Xbox is doing, but it does matter what everyone else is doing. You have to take into account what is happening elsewhere, what's happening outside your own purview to fully understand the decisions that Xbox is making. Now, some people will say, well, you're just an Xbox shill. I'm not an Xbox shill. Am I an Xbox fanboy in the respect that I enjoy gaming on Xbox? It's where I game most of, yes, absolutely, 100%. But I'm not a shill when all I'm trying to do is provide context and logic. And I'm looking around me and I feel like a crazy person because everyone is having this emotional, visceral overreaction to things that are happening in the gaming industry. They're tying things together that make no sense. For instance, the layoffs that happened with Tango Gameworks, the restructuring that happened, somehow gaming journalists and opinion leaders in the space tied that to the success of Game Pass. Those are two entirely separate issues, and they're not tied. In fact, I think Game Pass, as we've gone through the stories today, is a solution to this shift in gaming that we're seeing. We're seeing complex changes that need thoughtful discussion, and I don't think that we're getting that thoughtful discussion from many of our traditional gaming journalists, from many of our opinion leaders. Instead, what we get is knee-jerk reactions. Little context, knee-jerk reactions. I'm just refusing to jump on that outrage. I'm refusing to jump on the bandwagon of those knee-jerk reactions. And the response to that is, you're just a shill. Nope. I'm really not. And if that's what being a shill means, providing context, giving a reasoned perspective, then I'm a shill, baby. I'm a shill. Let me know what you guys think. Hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel. My name is X1 the Gamer. We cover stuff like this all the time on this channel. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.